It's a great pleasure for me to join you in Chile, even though I do so remotely. I well remember my visit before COVID and how excited I was by the reception which impact investing was getting in Santiago. And I'd like to chat today about the role of families. You're an association of families, and families have entrepreneurial traits that have led to economic success for them. At the same time, they have a set of values that is usually much closer to those of impact thinking than those of larger businesses owned by a variety of different shareholders. And I think what is happening now requires us as families to show leadership in new ways of reducing inequalities as well as environmental damage. It's consistent with the sense of responsibility that we feel and that we pass on to our children as best we can. Now, what does impact thinking involve? Impact thinking involves bringing notions of the effects we have on people and planet alongside the dimension of risk and profit. It is quite simply transformative. It is taking advantage of three powerful trends today to turn our businesses and our investment managers to bring solutions to the great social and environmental problems we face. What are those three forces? The first one is a change in values, which started with our children and the children of others who refused to purchase the goods of companies that were doing harm, refused to work with them for them, and sought to support companies that were improving lives and the planet. This became noticed by investors, and investors are channeling today $40 trillion to ESG investing, which seeks to deliver both impact and profit. This change in values converges with changes in technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, augmented reality, the genome, and computing converging that enable us to deliver impacts globally in ways humanity could never previously contemplate. And the third force coming together with these two is the force of transparency on the impacts we create. We are able, because of big data and artificial intelligence and machine learning today, to reflect the impacts that companies create through their operations, through their employment, through their products, and through their supply chains on people and the environment, and to translate them into monetary terms that enable comparison between these different impacts and profit. When you take these three forces together, it's like another tech revolution. You can see it in companies like Tesla, using new technology to enter a market where the impact is negative and shifting the whole of the automobile industry away from the combustion engine. And you can see it in startups and growth companies in every sector, in the construction sector, which is heavily polluting, in clean energy, where utilities are concerned, in the chemical industry, in education, in health, in fintech. It's quite simply another tech revolution occurring today with impact at its core. Regulators across the world, whether it's the SEC, which is responsible for financial regulation in the US, as you know, or the ISSB, the newly created International Sustainability Standards Board that is seeking to standardize the measurement of social and environmental impacts in physical quantities, tons of carbon, liters of water, across the whole world except for the US, or the EU, which has driven impact transparency in the investment business. Powerful forces are now at work among regulators to mandate the transparency on social and environmental impacts. Now, why am I giving you all this background? Because families and their philanthropic activities have to take this changing environment into account if we want to fulfill our obligation to do the greatest good that we can with our philanthropic activities. And this leads us to different ways of thinking. If we're going to be measuring the impacts of companies, shouldn't we as philanthropists be measuring the impacts of our philanthropic activities? We're so used to giving money away and measuring nothing, and so are governments. And so it behoves us as philanthropists, as well as business leaders and investment leaders, to measure our impacts. And when we begin to measure our impacts, so then we begin to have the conviction to fund organizations that are performing better than others and to enable them to scale, instead of keeping, as philanthropy has done for 100 years, philanthropic service providers small and out of money. Because in the absence of measurement, we shift from one to another, feeling that there's so much need, we can't just limit our activities to supporting a small number of organizations. The second aspect is that impact investment has brought the concept of pay for outcomes, pay for successful outcomes. The social impact bond, which I was privileged to play a part in inventing in 2010, was the first time we had a financial investment vehicle where the returns depended on achieving a social good. In the case of the first social impact bond, it had to do with preventing young prisoners from going back to jail after their release. And although that market counts 230 different bonds across the world in 30 countries, including many in Latin America, covering 15 different social issues, its real power has been to inspire financial markets, where we see today sustainability-linked bonds and loans amounting to $1 trillion, not $1 billion, $1 trillion, issued in 21 alone. And so as philanthropists, we should embrace not just the management of outcomes, but paying for outcomes, committing to pay if certain outcomes are achieved. And the contracts that we sign to do this enable the charitable or profit with purpose businesses that need funding to turn to investors to raise investment capital to achieve the targeted outcomes and to get paid. And finally, our endowments, the capital that we have channeled to our charitable foundations, cannot be acting in ways that conflict with our mission. If our mission is environmental, we can't be investing in fossil fuel companies that pollute extremely heavily at the same time as we fund organizations that are trying to reduce fossil fuel usage. And so I leave you with this thought. We are all entrepreneurial by background. The origins of our wealth come from entrepreneurship. We've been the leaders in innovative thinking and in risk taking. The time has come now to incorporate into the core of our values not just the dimensions of risk and return, but the dimension of impact. I wish you well in the discussion that is going to follow, and I look forward to visiting you in Chile sometime before too long.